Baldurs Gate 3 is a serious contender for the label of greatest video game ever made. This 6-year labour of love, brewed up by Larian Studios, spent its entire debut year winning every single Game of the Year award it was nominated for. And then in its subsequent year, it grabbed Best Community Support due to the continuous and extensive ongoing patches. I genuinely cannot think of a better game to kick off this channel with for a little platinum video. So please sit back, grab yourself a bevy, make sure your phone is charged so that you can watch at least 2 screens at once, and settle in for a Baldurs Gate 3 platinum journey. Alright, so pulling up trusty old PSN profiles to get an idea of what the platinum trophy looks like, we see a respectable 7 out of 10 difficulty rating, a minimum of 2 playthroughs, a 120-hour estimated platinum achievement time, and on top of that, 28 of the 54 trophies are missable, just over half. So, we're looking at both a challenge and a time investment. That said, we can go ahead and ignore the recommended 2 playthrough requirement and simply do everything in 1 run, so long as we use a few cheeky saves here and there. This theoretically cuts the invested time in half, but it does require completing all missable and miscellaneous trophies on the Tactician difficulty. To achieve this, I knew I had to assemble the perfect team, a team that would be able to handle any challenges that the Sword Coast may throw at them. So, with that said, it's my great pleasure to say, meet the gang. First off, we have Dayman, a half-elf open-hand monk. Dayman is a champion of the sun and a master of karate and friendship. Not just for some, but for everyone. Dayman grew up fairly privileged and thus does not take kindly to hearing the word no. Not that he ever does, mind you, because of the implication. Coming in next is the Bouncer, a human paladin of devotion. This monstrously meaty, muscle-bound freak of flesh specializes in preaching and proselytizing his unwavering, logic-defying faith. This faith grants him a 6th sense to danger and allows him to easily perform ocular pat-downs on any encounter to immediately discern friend from foe. Third off the rank is Trashman, a dwarven master of throne carnage. This battle god's approach to conflict resolution can generally be summed up by immediately starts blasting. His short stature does not impede his ability to get up high and start raining down chaos on the battlefield, littering it with weapons, enemies, and most importantly, trash. Finally, filling out the gang, we have Ratboy. This halfling bard possesses a musical aptitude completely contrasting his impoverished upbringing. Due to his preference in the company of rodents, Ratboy has actually developed the ability to commune with all manners of small creatures. Or also large creatures. Look, Ratboy has the speak with animals spell, alright? Just unlike his 3 companions, however, Ratboy is unaware of most aspects surrounding his past. Stricken with low self-esteem on account of never knowing who his father was, this esteem can often manifest into strange, violent, and dark urges. With the gang formally introduced, we are ready to set out to the Emerald Coast and begin our adventure to achieve that most highly coveted shiny digital award. Our journey begins on a Mind Flayer battleship that is currently being besieged by a Githyanki attack force. This brief introductory segment acts as a tutorial for the game. Here we get introduced to the setting as well as a few of the companions we're going to meet along the way. One of these companions we actually aren't going to need for any trophies. However, the other one we do. This is Shadowheart. One of the 2 companions we're actually going to need to semi-like us through the game. That requires interacting with a game mechanic that is called companion approval. Basically, make them happy by doing things that they like. Unfortunately, Shadowheart hasn't quite been able to escape her containment pod as easily as we were. This is only a minor setback, however, because the gang fortunately comes equipped with a wealth of electrical engineering knowledge. Using said knowledge, they're able to easily disable the alien machinery and set our fair damsel free. She then quickly hides an ominous die-looking artifact upon her person. Gee, I wonder if this is gonna come up later. Not much further into the battleship, we come across just a lovely representation of Forgotten Realms democracy in action, as a Mind Flayer and a Devil attempt to murder each other. Here we meet our first optional boss of the game that we are going to need to take down for a trophy. To do this, everyone takes turns smacking him before Shadowheart sets up some lovely celebration capsules and casts her explosion cantrip, giving us our first trophy. Immediately after that, we jump up to the ship's controls to grab our second trophy and close out the prologue. After safely landing the ship, we end up in a Larian Studios staple that is the starting beach. We've now reached Act 1 in Earnest, and there's a few things that we want to take care of. Starting off, we meet up with Shadowheart, and again choose to ignore the artifact the camera blatantly zooms in on. Further up the beach, we are reunited with Lizel, who is going to be just instrumental in handling a future encounter. We run into a dapper looking fellow that's having a showdown with an imaginary intellect devourer. He convinces Ratboy to investigate and then promptly tries to kill him. As we all know, this is how the best of friendships start, and we recruit a new companion. About 50 feet away from here, we stumble upon someone who, much like Shadowheart, requires some rescuing. A quick high five later, and we officially have a wizard amongst us. A brief and uneventful trip into a crypt later allows us to meet Withers. This sexy little skeleton is our ticket to getting our fourth and final member, as well as our third trophy. With the gang fully formed now, we head on up north to the first hub area of the game, whereupon we stumble into a fight outside the Druid's Grove. This fight allows Dayman to show off his martial prowess and nab us our fourth trophy of the run-through. Into the Grove briefly now, and we meet the second last Origin companion, Will, who incredibly conveniently actually sends us off to go meet the last Origin companion. Karlach is the other person besides Shadowheart that we need to garner some approval for, and happens to be the only one that we need to romance for a trophy. Not that being forced to romance Karlach is a problem at all, because she's without a doubt the best character in this and every other game that's ever been created or will be created across any potential parallel universes that have existed or ever will exist. If you disagree with that assessment, you are of course entitled to your opinion, but your opinion's wrong and you need to change it. Anyway. Karlach sends us off to go fight some devil worshippers that conveniently took residence on top of a hill, allowing us to grab yet another trophy. Back to the Grove now, and it's time for some approval manipulation. We can get these two to like us alongside fulfilling the requirements for the most difficult trophy in the game. Leave no one behind. This requires saving every tiefling that we possibly can. For whatever reason, these guys in this game just have no self-preservation and require constant babysitting to prevent their untimely death. Along the way, we pop a miscellaneous trophy for reading someone's mind and another miscellaneous trophy for breaking out of jail after a shopping trip went slightly sideways. We're not completely done in the Druid's Grove, but we will come back there in a little bit. For now, we're going to run into the two main reasons this game won so many awards. Here we have Scratch. We convince this beautiful pup that he'd be better suited in our protected camp rather than a forest that's teeming with flesh-hungry hyena beasts. Not long after he takes up residence, we get to play fetch with him for the second most important trophy in the game. We then stumble into a nearby cave to meet the owlbear pup and his recently deceased mother. This little dude ends up joining up with some goblins briefly before taking up residence within our camp and making way for the greatest trophy in this game's list, potentially any game's list. We're not quite done with recruiting cute little babies in Act 1 yet, because the next trophy requires summoning the Quasit Shovel. The scroll for which we find in a long-dead Necromancer's lair alongside some very important utensils. This sweet little angel seamlessly ingratiates herself with the gang, and she's going to prove her worth almost instantly, because not far from Shovel's home, we actually come upon our second optional boss, the Phase Spider Matriarch. The trophy requirements for her dictate that we have to kill her before she can hatch any of her spiderling eggs. This used to be very trivial because we could just push her into the conveniently located hole within her arena, but it was patched some time ago. The other way to tackle it is by sneaking around and breaking the eggs before getting into combat, but that's boring and the gang isn't about that life. So instead, Shovel goes in to deliver a surprise attack, skipping her first turn, preventing her from hatching those eggs, and from then it's just a simple matter of beating the ever-living crap out of it. Easy work for yet another trophy. Briefly returning to the approval grind, we've actually now gained enough for Shadowheart to open up to us about being a member of a sadistic and bitter cult. But more importantly, she's told us about how she likes a very specific flower that we can find in the next act. We also come across some infernal iron. This is something we need to stabilize the infernal engine that's replaced Karlach's mortal heart. By this point, you've probably realized that all of the companions we've met share the common theme that is the secret to excellent writing. We now have to power through a bunch of rests to advance a couple of the other companion quest lines that we'll need. The first night, we are rudely woken up by a haggard and mundane looking woman who incorrectly assumes that she's saved us from the Mind Flayer ship crash. But like, what crash? We send her on her way and hope that we never have to interact with her again. The next rest, we meet the source of Will's Warlock Pact and Powers, a pact that we're going to need to break for him much later on. We're also woken up by the young chap Astarion, who's trying to turn Ratboy into a halfling juice box. Here we come upon the M. Night Shyamalan twist of the game, as it's revealed that Astarion was a vampire all along. Fortunately for him, Ratboy just wants to go back to sleep, so he lets Astarion have a sip, which grants us yet another trophy. Unfortunately for him, Dayman is the fighter of all Nightmen. He promptly makes his grievance with the night creature known. Let's go ahead and pop Astarion down to rest next to Lizel for now. One last small item of business as we break out a captured goblin from the Druid Grove. This little Spitfire is Sazza, who we're going to need to save another couple of times later on for another trophy. Our next stop is a camp full of small and very tossable goblins, the first group of which we managed to grab another trophy by using one as a weapon against another. I love this game. We run into the de facto leader of the goblin camp while he's in the middle of interrogating a dead squid. In textbook gang fashion, we completely derail this interrogation just by the nature of being loud and intrusive, which actually pops us the role player trophy. That seems oddly fitting, honestly. Meeting up again with Sazza to prevent her second cause of death as she goes to tell Minthara the location of the Druid Grove. The Druid Grove that's full of tieflings. The tieflings that we needed to keep alive. Shit. While we were hurrying back to the grove, we actually came across a Mind Flayer tadpole. One quick look at this and Ratboy knew he was going to slurp that bad boy up, which actually managed to get us another trophy. Delicious! The raid will not begin until the following dawn, So we go down for another long rest and actually pop a trophy related to sleeping. I think more developers really need to encourage trophies for sleeping. I think that's just fantastic game design. Anyway, where were we? Alright. Serendipitously, we know exactly where Minthara's raid is going to take place, and wouldn't you know it, it's at the bottom of a very large gate. Looks like Trashman's time to shine. We start off with a little dose of go fast, and then we call in Trashman's brothers for some backup. We lastly toss a volatile flask for a tiny bit more chaos. With all the cards in play, it's simply just a matter of hitting things until they die. After having to spend more time killing the allies we called in than the entire invading force, the Tieflings, which all survived thankfully, decide to throw a party and nominate our camp as the location. These guys look so happy. This is such an awesome party. I can't wait until we see them again when they've safely arrived in Baldurs Gate with no other hiccups whatsoever. After some much deserved one-on-one time with Karlach to make sure we're still on track for her trophy, we are woken up to a chat with the Archdruid Halsin. He's a character that we're going to need to complete a quest line for in the next act, but for now he's explaining the two different paths that we need to take to get into Act 2. Speaking of, we have two options. Go through the Underdark or over the mountain pass. Where have you heard this before? You'll only need to do one for the game, but we have two trophies tied to each path, so we're going to be briefly going into each. We'll start off with the Underdark. We access this through the goblin camp that we had a pleasant and peaceful visit to earlier. Now the Underdark is a huge optional area that does have an overarching quest going on in it, as well as a few optional mini quests we could engage with if we wanted to. But this isn't the gang helps everyone, this is the gang gets all the trophies. So we ignore a benevolent and sapient fungi colony as well as some captured gnomes and whatever's going on with them, and instead proceed through the Underdark to an area where we'll be able to meet the third optional trophy boss, Grim. We're gonna have to circumvent this calamitously clawed construct in order to use the furnace down here for the second trophy that we need in the Underdark. Now this is a fight that you can cheese in a few different ways, but honestly he's weak to bludgeoning damage, so we're just gonna go with that. So, the Bouncer and Dayman get a few meaty hits on him, which just leaves it to Trashman from the top ropes to do what he does best and clean up the mess. With Grim down and out for the count, it's a simple matter of using the furnace to make something that, to be honest, we're never going to use, and we've nabbed both of the Underdark trophies. We're done with this area now, so we can skip on off to the mountain pass. Before we can get there, we run into a group of Githyankies that are sitting by a campfire and roasting some s'mores. This is a forward patrol from the Gith Kresh that we'll be visiting very shortly. The lad with the huge dragon that definitely isn't compensating for anything is called Kithrak Voss, and we'll be speaking with him in a little bit for one of the mountain pass trophies. For now though, he's telling us that he wants the artifact that we're carrying around for some sort of mystery alien business plot move forward stuff. This encounter can turn hostile, but not with Ratboy's effortless charm, allowing us to proceed forward with nary a scratch. Into the mountain pass proper now, and our destination is the huge monastery that's been co-opted by the Githyanki. Have I been saying Githyanki too much? It feels like I have. Like, you know how when you say something a lot, the word sort of loses all meaning? Like you get stuck into that loop where you keep saying it, and like in your brain you can't reconcile that it's actually a sound associated with a word. Like it just loses all meaning, and then you like hyperfix. While infiltrating said monastery, we managed to get a miscellaneous trophy for digging up 5 buried treasure stashes, as well as finding the key for the whole reason that we've come here. This key unlocks the Blood of Lathander, a one-handed mace that is the earliest legendary tier item that you can actually come across. Well, I mean, come across without exploiting, that is. Passing through the green alien's house now, as we turn our new friends into precious experience. We eventually come to the last room and meet up with the head bitch in charge. He gives us some plot exposition and tells us all about his queen and blah blah blah, and he's dead. Leading us to speak with the actual head bitch in charge. The person super appreciative of our wave here is called Vlaakith, who tasks us with going inside the artifact to kill the dream visitor that's been harassing us in our sleep. This is of course something that we are very glad to do. And so we hop into the pocket dimension that we've been lugging around with us all this time to meet up with her, and are once again forced to gaze upon her weary and bird-like features, before very happily stabbing her. Except this doesn't kill her, because she was obviously wearing like a stab-proof vest and totally pranked us. Oh well. We pop out of the artifact for now and hope that we don't have to interact with her too much more, because the gang doesn't have 5 members, right? Right next to the area that we found ourselves in now is the entrance to the secret lair that's hiding the blood of Lathander, which we have a key for to retrieve safely, fortunately. However, if you don't use the key, you set off an alarm that activates a sort of self-destruct sequence, and that feels way more on brand for the gang, so we do just that. And then escape with our new prize, leaving a pile of rubble behind us. A little further on, we meet Gale's granddad, who does some cool magic stuff to Gale, which nets us our second companion-related trophy, and now all that's left is to travel into Act 2, where we get a scripted rest that grants us our last Act 1 trophy. There's a long loading screen. I guess it has to, like, load the next area. Okay, well, we've got the leaving Act 1 trophy. Wait a second. Why? No, not like this. Oh, for fuck. So, funny story. We do actually need Lizel for her associated companion trophy. The guide on PSN profiles just mentions that, like, she makes it easier, and obviously I took it to mean that we could do it without her, but yeah, nah, not the case. Fortunately, I was able to find an earlier save that had her corpse, so I think if I reanimate it and then rush her to that spot, we should be able to get the trophy. So I guess this is the resurrect Lizel and take her to the place where she has a chat with Voss, which allows us to get her associated trophy speedrun, any percent. Yes, thank you very much. I believe that is a world record for that particular category, 21 minutes and 11 seconds. You want to see what the best part of doing that whole thing was though? Had I just proceeded with my original save into Act 2, we would have found Lizel there patiently waiting and could have just taken her back. I guess she's like programmed to beat you into Act 2 if she's dead as like a failsafe to recruit her. Oh well, fun times. Let's go ahead and update this estimate here and let's see how we're tracking briefly. As of now, we've successfully nabbed all Act 1 trophies, and we've also managed to grab just over half of the miscellaneous trophies. Now the only one of these I'm semi-concerned about at this point is Bookworm, partially because I'm seeing mixed messages on whether you have to read the entire book or if you can just glance at it, and partially because the person I'm using to read them is illiterate. Here's what we have in store for us in Act 2. And you can probably already tell that it's a significantly shorter list. That's because we're actually past the halfway point now. While this game does have 3 acts, the first act spent just under 3 years in early access and was given lots of tender love and care. That's not to say that the later 2 aren't as good, but they are certainly significantly shorter in terms of content, especially when you're doing a focused trophy run. Anyway, enough rambling, let's go ahead and jump into Act 2, which places the gang in the shadow-cursed lands, where we are immediately met by a group of cultists that are fortuitously waiting to escort us to Moonrise Towers, a destination that we'll be visiting quite a bit in this section of the game. The shadow-cursed lands are afflicted by a prevailing darkness that kills anyone who touches it, and requires a special light, a moon lantern, to be able to safely traverse. Thankfully, we meet a nearby Drider who offers us his moon lantern, and now we have the ability to safely travel everywhere in Act 2, almost before it even started. Before skipping off to Moonrise, we make a quick stop at the Last Light Inn. This area is the second hub of this act, and it's here that we meet up with a character from the first 2 Baldurs Gate games, who's leading a group of harpers to try and fight off the absolute cultists. Funnily enough, while having a look around here, we actually popped the Bookworm trophy. This was literally the first thing that we read in this act, so my worries amounted to nothing, thankfully. And we also catch up with the Tieflings and monitor their progress. Over half of them have died, but fortunately for us that doesn't affect our trophy requirements and something we don't have to care about. The ones that did survive tell us that a bunch of them were taken captive in Moonrise Towers, and they require a dashing group of heroes to set them free. Moonrise Towers, the place that just keeps getting mentioned, so it seems like we might as well make our way there. On the way, we do encounter the first optional trophy boss of this act in the form of a necromantically reincarnated relative of this act's antagonist. She, much like any tax collector, is completely and utterly deranged from her infatuation with money. Now I really wanted Rat Boy to take care of this, but Bouncer jumped in and was like, hold my beer, and he actually managed to convince her into giving up her toll collecting ways so that she could pursue a career in dramatic screaming. Now, just as we're about to enter Moonrise Towers, we get a visit from the lovely Mazora, who you may remember is the source of Will's powers. She informs us that one of her boss's most important pals has been taken captive, blah 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 blah. We need to free them, blah blah blah. This does give us leverage to break the pact that they have, which is the prerequisite for his trophy that we'll fulfill a little bit later. We finally get into the towers and we meet the big bad boy of Act 2, Hetheric Thorm. He has an incredibly badass showdown with a tiny defenseless goblin. And then gives us a villain monologue about something. I wasn't paying a lot of attention. I didn't really hear it. It was something about pictures of Spider-Man. More importantly though, we find our old mate Sazza for the third and final time. This allows us to send her on her way and finally pops her associated trophy. Heading into the dungeon of the towers now to free the captive tieflings as part of the Leave No One Behind trophy. We meet a bunch of gnomes that have the ability to free themselves so long as no guards are watching. This is a very simple matter of just waiting until all the guards are on their federally mandated 15-minute smoko and then busting the captives out, popping our 28th trophy. Wowee, we've got over half of them now. Look at us go. Time for a couple of miscellaneous objectives now, as we find the flower that Shadowheart opened up to us about in the previous act. Once we give this to her, we unlock her subsequent trophy, and now no longer require her. So let's go ahead and add her to the friendship pile alongside Astarion and Lizel. We also pop a trophy for brewing some homemade decoctions that I absolutely would not go anywhere near, and then head into the House of Healing. We soon discover that the title of this place is completely ironic, as we meet Kethric's uncle, who also happens to be the most senior medical professional in this district. So successful that he has the incredible ability to turn any number of meager ailments into a certain death. We have a trophy requirement here to defeat him before he can conduct said surgery on us, which we make very easy by convincing him to have his assistants practice on each other, which forces him to waste all of his turns trying to resurrect them. Medicine is very, very different in this world. Going back to what I was saying earlier about the difference in act lengths, we're actually almost done with all of the trophy requirements in this act. All that's left is to go have a quick chin wag with the cleric at the top of the Last Light Inn, who is single-handedly managing to keep all the bad away, which keeps everyone there alive. And we have to foil the Absolutionists' plan to kidnap her. Absolutists? Absolution? I don't know. The word's losing meaning again. No, I'm not going to let that happen. We fight off the would-be kidnappers, which keeps this area safe and sound, as well as all of its very important inhabitants alive. All that's left now is to go have a sticky beak in Kethric's tomb, where we supposedly uncover the secret to his immortality, before arriving in the very bottom area of this dungeon, which is actually the entrance to a dark god's domain aptly named the Shadowfell. Progressing through here, at the very end we meet a character called Dame Aylin. She's a captured angel that's essentially been operating as a battery for Kethric's immortality. However, that comes to an end after we free her and queues up an incredibly badass magical girl transformation. Seriously, like, watch this scene and then tell me you wouldn't follow this woman into a battle against the entire United Kingdoms of the North. Once she completes her transformation into Super Aylin, she flies off to go give her captor a stern talking to, and we scurry off to Moonrise Towers after her, where we have a very brief encounter with the remaining cultists.
You freed the Night Song.
Once that's done, we ascend up to the roof to find Kethric doing some monologuing, while Aylin flies around doing cool aerial stuff off screen.
What have you done to me?
Now, this isn't really relevant or important for anything, but I thought it was funny to see because Trashman managed to get 2 nat 20 rolls in a row and succeeded in intimidating the old boy.
We're not so different, it seems.
It didn't change anything though, because as soon as Aylin lands down and starts throwing words, we have to do a fight regardless. And we get met with one of my absolute favourite video game tropes, where we won the fight, but it doesn't matter because in the subsequent cutscene, Aylin proves herself useless and is captured by Kethy and taken under the tower into a mind flayer colony. Cool, awesome. Obviously, we have no choice but to jump in and give pursuit, but it works out because we actually have a couple of things we want to do down here anyway. We find the last remaining tiefling that we need to save, just chilling in a pod, and then we find Mizora's contact trapped in a further pod. her contact being her. What a cheeky devil. Fortunately, as you may remember, we are experts with alien technology and are able to free her extremely easily, after which she finally agrees to free Will from his contract 6 months from now. Whatever. Getting to the end of this area now, and we catch up again with Ketherick while he's in the middle of doing some really cool Power Rangers villain stuff with the antagonists of the upcoming act.
The Testament of Merkel!
And you'll notice that Aelin is once again trapped and acting as a battery, so it was like, what was the point of any of that? No matter. We send Shovel invisibly in to go and break her out as soon as we start the fight, but it turns out she's actually not capable of doing that. I guess you can't do everything when you're a girly girl that's that cute.
And you, slab of beef with nipples, moo.
No worries, because Ratboy goes off and breaks her out, and then we beat up on the old man a little more before he falls into a pit of fog and emerges as the avatar of the god of death, taking the form of a giant skeleton with a tremendously large scythe. If you've ever played Dark Souls, you're probably suffering some minor PTSD at this moment. This big old bundle of joy is guarding our final Act 2 trophy, requiring us to kill him before he can heal himself off any of his bone minion spawns, which he spawns every single round. Luckily though, godly avatars are actually deathly allergic to game-breaking damage. So it's just a simple matter of Trashman putting enough explosive ordnance down at his feet to level a small village and then setting off the fireworks to bring Act 2 to a close. Or at least close to a close. Turns out when you go to leave this act, you get put into a forced rest sequence that you get rudely woken up from regardless. Our Dream Guardian has interrupted our sleep for the third time in this playthrough, this time to nag us for assistance in her chill pocket realm. We hurry in to find it under attack by militant alien monks that are there trying to free their messiah, who has found himself imprisoned in said pocket dimension coincidentally. More importantly, however, this attack forces our Dream Guardians guys to slip, and we finally uncover their true identity. This unsightly and elderly blonde woman we've been speaking with for the entire game was actually a bird. Nah, I'm just kidding. They were a mind flayer. This one, however, is claiming to be one of the good guys. We team up with him to put the smackdown on some aliens, and then he closes this section out with some exposition and the suggestion that we evolve into a partial mind flayer. This tadpole looks significantly less tasty than the ones we've been gobbling down so far, so we turn it down and exit the sequence. Okay, now we are actually finished with Act 2, I promise. Let's go ahead and take another quick look at how we're tracking, and it turns out we've managed to successfully grab all of the Act 2 trophies, thankfully. And this is the list of what we're looking for in the final act. Now, while this does look like a lot, and it is, we've actually completed most of the prerequisites for many of these already, so it's going to be very, very quick. Alrighty, Act 3, here we go. Arriving in the outskirt town of Rivington, our first stop is the Circus. This place is full of NPCs that are going to help us with a couple of miscellaneous trophies, one of which for earning 100 gold pieces from busking, and another one for killing 20 creatures while drunk. This goes about the same as most circus visits go, really. Proceeding now into the large fortress at the end of Rivington, Ratboy finally learns who his father is, in a dream sequence revealing he is the son of Baal, the god of murder. That explains so much about why Ratboy is the way he is. We also get a special invitation to the inauguration of Baldurs Gate's most young and handsome dictator, Gortash. This titular tyrant represents half of the major antagonists we're going to be dealing with, and of course he has a trophy tied to his defeat. The requirements for this one actually are kind of tricky, because we have to kill him without setting off any of the traps around the fortress. And there are traps everywhere, like this dude lives with unbelievable levels of paranoia. However, he isn't actually hostile to us at the time of the ceremony, because he's trying to keep up the appearance of authenticity. This allows us to use the incredible power of dragging and dropping to deliver him to a nearby fast travel point. This one coincidentally happens to be next to a huge cliff. If this isn't an opportunity for gravity to show us what it can do, then I really don't know what is. Oh no, I'm Gortash and I'm falling. Finally entering Baldurs Gate now, and our first point of business is to deal with a serial killing dwarf. This guy is here murdering people all over the city to try and appease our Pop Ball and become an unholy assassin. And while you may think killing and stopping him is a benevolent act, we're actually only doing it to steal the bag of trophies that he's collected and take credit for his work. All hail Ratboy, the new assassin of Ball. It is now finally time to finish the last 2 companion trophies by punching out a few long rests. The first of which we help Will decide to keep his father dead in order to get out of his contract. And the second of which we get for going on a date with Karlach. I really wish I could show you how this date ends, but I'm fairly confident that's a big no-no for YouTube terms of service. All I'll say is that Karlach is a wonderfully progressive lady, and that Ratboy can now skip his yearly prostate check. Remember fellas, prevention is the best cure. Once we get back from the date, we get to pop one of our last miscellaneous trophies for having a long rest using nothing but alcohol as the supplies. And then we do one final rest after that for a trophy that we're not going to talk about at all. If you know, you know. We have 2 more bosses to go after before hitting the endgame now, and first on the docket is Arnsaw, an undead dragon hiding under Worm's Rock. Now to fulfill the trophy requirements for this guy, we have to kill him while he's in the air charging up this big powerful attack. While he's in that state, it gives him incredible damage resistance and usually requires running and breaking line of sight. However, the gang is unbelievably strong at this moment, so we just stand our ground and hit the dragon until it's gone. And there you go, we killed a dead dragon. That's yippee. The next order of business is to go tackle the other major antagonist of Act 3 in Orin. This genuinely insane murder fetishist represents the absolute tippy-top right on the hot crazy scale, and holds the last MacGuffin we need to defeat the Absolute. The trophy attached to her is to defeat her while her cheer squad is glazing her up, which just requires us to break through 12 layers of Unbreakable, which we can do with little baby hits. It's very easy. This boss arena, much like probably half of them in this game, is another one that takes place right next to a huge cliff. And I was originally intending to let gravity do its job here as well, but honestly, like, we are so crazy strong now that it would have been more of a hassle to do it this way, so we just hit this beast until it dies, which grants us our 43rd trophy. More importantly though, this is the spot where we're going to go ahead and slap a cheeky save to come back to later. So at this point we've actually done everything trophy related in this act and are ready to proceed to the end game, which, you know, locks us into a linear path. However, we have one slight hiccup in that we need to hit level 12 for the last miscellaneous trophy, and we're less than 2k experience away from reaching that. Fortunately, there's a few murder fetishists still around, and that cliff that we fought Orin next to still exists. Hitting max level, we visit our very last remaining friend to fulfill the previous trophy requirements I mentioned. And then we retire him to our finally completed friendship pile. It's finally time to head into the finale of the game. As we enter the final fight of the game, we are pitted up against a souped up emperor riding on a red dragon that we have to kill for our last boss trophy, as well as a handful of backup. So this last encounter is a large scale fight where the game kind of wants you to call in all the allies you've made along the way, but the gang hasn't really made any allies, and it doesn't matter anyway because this isn't the Gang & Co story. This is the gang gets all the trophies. So we work our way through the dragon, as well as the small army of enemies standing in our way, and push towards the nether stone at the end of the arena, which hides our final encounter with the nether brain. Similar to Oren, I considered a few different approaches here, but our party is so strong at the end of the game that it was completely trivial to just brute force through the encounter and finish off our first playthrough. With the last choice the game presents you, we choose to dominate the brain for ourselves and grab ourselves 4 trophies from that one finish. That's one playthrough down, and all we have to do is a little bit of cleanup now. So we revisit our earlier save, and this time choose to embrace Bol and become the Slayer, which nets us our 50th trophy. Just 4 more to go. Before getting all the way to the finish line this time, we choose to slurp up the last tadpole offered to us and complete our transformation into a lawful evil calamari. And because we finished the Tactician trophy, we turn the difficulty down so that we can speed up to the end, and it makes this fight look incredibly different, because everything has half the health it did have, while we have double our initial health. So in no time at all, we've closed it out once more, and this time again we're going to dominate the brain, but we're doing it for our Papa Bol instead of ourself this time. Now this finishing screen was an area that I was especially upset about my audio corrupting because it was so glitchy and I was so excited to share it. Like, for instance, just look at this. Like, what option should I choose? I was thinking of going for not found, but eventually decided to go for not found instead, which closed out this playthrough and netted us our 51st trophy. One last playthrough to go, and all we have to do is reload after defeating the brain, and this time we're going to choose to destroy it and save the Sword Coast from an eternity under our tyranny. Choosing the good option in this game actually gets you an epilogue party at the end that really strangely saw our friendship pile mysteriously reanimated. However, Ratboy isn't actually here because he pledged himself to the god of murder and then chose deliberately not to take over the brain. So in retaliation, Daddy's turned our brains into mashed potato. We end up closing out the game starting from a young bard trying to escape the mind flayers into a mind flayer that pisses himself. What a journey that has been. Now, if you made it this far into the video, I cannot thank you enough, and I sincerely hope that you enjoyed watching this almost as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, a like and a subscribe would mean the world to me, as I am planning for much more content similar to this in the coming weeks. But for now, thank you so much again, and please enjoy this outro of The Gang Goes to Hell.